Real-world snapshot of a project in action.
Yeah, it is.
What does it tell us about the practical challenges that companies face?
It's a really fascinating document.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's kind of a cautionary tale about the challenges of real-world projects.
Okay.
It doesn't directly talk about the interface between a warehouse and production, but the issues that it highlights about material availability and information flow, they really resonate with those underlying concepts we've been talking about.
Right, so even though it's a different context, the same principles apply.
Exactly. It's a great example of what can go wrong when material flow isn't managed well.
Okay, so what was this project all about?
It was called the...
Interesting. What was their timeline for this project?
So it started in October 2023,
Okay.
and they were originally planning to finish in April 2024.
Okay.
But by August 2024, they were already facing significant delays.
Oh,
They were running about 5 to 7 months behind schedule.
wow. So they had to adjust their completion date.
Yeah, they pushed it out to October 2025.
So a full year delay.
Yeah, it was a major setback.
Wow. And did this
Yeah.
delay also lead to cost increases?
Yeah, actually substantial ones.
Oh, no.
The report says there was a 300 to 400% increase in costs,
Wow.
which they attributed to lost productive hours. Yeah, and several factors contributed to this, but the main problem was that materials weren't available.
Right.
When the report was written, 30% of the materials still hadn't arrived.
So almost a third of the materials were missing.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a lot. And what kind of impact did this have on the actual work?
Well, the report gives some specific examples,
Okay.
and they're pretty frustrating.
I bet.
For example, they needed specific T reducers for the piping,
Okay.
but those weren't available when they needed them.
Oh.
So they had to take existing ones and manually recondition them.
Oh, wow. So they had to improvise.
Yeah, they had to turn a simple task into a long and resource-intensive process.
And I'm guessing that wasted a lot of time.
It did, and it gets worse.
I
In
bet.
some cases, the structural platforms arrived after the pipes that were supposed to be installed on them.
So they had things arriving out of order?
Yeah, it was a logistical nightmare.
Wow.
And because of that, they had to build temporary structures just to keep things moving.
That's crazy.
It was all this added time and effort that wasn't planned for.
Okay, so it sounds like material availability was a huge issue.
It was.
Did they also have problems with information flow?
Yeah, that was another contributing factor.
Okay.
They were still missing a verified piping and instrumentation diagram or P&ID document.
Okay.
That included a complete list of materials for the project.
Ah, so they didn't have accurate documentation.
Right. They had some preliminary documents, but they didn't have the detailed technical specifications they needed.
So they couldn't finalize their installation plan.
Exactly.
And I bet that also caused problems with ordering materials.
It did. It was like trying to build something without a complete set of instructions.
Right. You don't know what parts you need.
Exactly.
So going back to the thesis,
Yeah.
all that talk about smooth material flow
Yeah.
and clear information flow, this project is a perfect example of what can happen when those things break down.
It really underscores the risk of relying too much on a push-based system.
Right, because without real-time demand signals, you're really dependent on accurate forecasts and timely procurement.
Exactly. And when those things go wrong, like in this project, the consequences can be really serious.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if a pull system would have been a better choice.
Yeah, for at least some parts of the project.
Right.
It might have helped to mitigate some of those material shortages.
Because they would have only ordered what they needed when they needed it.
Exactly.
Now, the project preview doesn't specifically analyze these problems in terms of push versus pull,
Right.
but the recommendations they make definitely point to the need for better material management.
Yeah, for sure. They suggest developing new costing and scheduling procedures
Okay.
and adjusting the sequence of the work
Okay.
and enhancing supporting services like process engineering utility and electrical support, quality control tools, and even creating better documentation.
So really focusing on getting the right materials in the right place at the right time.
Exactly, and that's the essence of good material flow.
Now, the report also mentions how many worker hours have been spent on the project so far,
It does.
and it gives an estimate for the work that still needs to be done.
Yeah, it's pretty eye-opening.
I bet, what do those numbers tell us?
So by the time the report was written, they had already spent 111,069 man-hours on the project.
Wow.
And they estimated that it would take another 107,368 man-hours to finish the project up to the function test stage.
So not even fully complete.
Right, and that brings the total to a massive 230,680 man-hours.
Wow. That's more than double what they originally planned.
It is.
Did they explain why the estimated man-hours increased so much?
Yeah, they break it down into three main factors.
Okay, let's hear it.
First, there were inefficiencies in the work itself and a lack of clear guidance from engineering,
Okay,
and that accounted for 21% of the increase.
okay,
Then they had to spend time on things that weren't in the original contract.
okay. So scope creep.
Yeah, and that was 15% of the increase.
Okay,
And the remaining 25% was related to their progress billing.
okay. So a combination of factors.
Yeah, but clearly a lot of it comes back to those material issues.
Right, all that rework and waiting for materials really adds up.
It does.
Preview mentions the challenges they faced when they tried to use the P&IDs for budget estimation early in the project.
Yeah, that was interesting.
What were the problems there?
So it turns out it's really hard to estimate budgets accurately just based on the initial piping and instrumentation diagrams and 3D visualizations.
Okay.
Converting those visual representations into detailed technical specifications is really difficult and time-consuming,
Okay.
especially creating that comprehensive material list.
Right.
And because they didn't have a clear material list right from the beginning, they ended up with inaccurate budgets, and that caused problems with procurement and scheduling.
Wow, so it all goes back to having the right information at the right time.
Exactly.
Okay, so to wrap things up for you, the learner, we've spent some time today looking at different strategies for moving materials through a business.
We have.
What are the key takeaways from these two sources?
So the master's thesis gave us a good theoretical understanding of the differences between push and pull systems.
Right.
And then it showed us a really structured way to analyze which material flows would benefit from a pull system.
Right, and they did.
Yeah.
And they looked at factors like demand, complexity, variety, and disruptions.
Right. They were really thorough.
And the main point is that implementing a pull system in the right context can really reduce waste and improve efficiency.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, the project preview gave us a very real-world look at the challenges companies face.
Right.
Those big delays and cost overruns in that milk powder project, right? They really highlight the importance of managing both the flow of materials and the flow of information.
They do. It's all connected.
Yeah, and it makes you think that a more proactive approach to planning could have prevented some of those problems.
Yeah, maybe even using some pull-based elements in their procurement and logistics.
Right. It's really interesting to think about how the initial planning, the information systems, and the physical movement of materials are all intertwined. They are.
And that leads us to a final thought for you, the learner.
Okay.
Considering those challenges in that milk powder project, how could a more proactive approach to material flow planning and information sharing have helped them avoid those delays and cost overruns?
Yeah, it's a good question to think about.
And if you want to explore these ideas further, I would recommend looking into things like lean manufacturing, supply chain optimization, and warehouse management systems.
Those are all great areas to learn more about.
And, a deeper understanding of material flow can really help companies improve their efficiency and save money.
It can.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Until our next exploration.
See you then.